students and the faculty about, what do we all agree on is something that we could work on together. So I would like to highlight, if I was voted into this position, that I would like to take my advocacy experience and the roles that I've had previously and that I've mentioned to challenge this question, because I don't think it's fair to how actually important we are as members of the Western community. And I would like to do that by encouraging a consistent flow of information between all the corners of our community and growing that practice within FIMS so that I can contribute to all the efforts that previous presidents have made in the FIMSSC and hopefully help to spur that along as well. Because the FIMS community is really strong, and I wish for anyone voting in the coming election to know that I'm an accountable candidate that wants to listen to you and amplify your voices, and not just take things that are important to me to the USC, but also represent ideas that are important to other students as well. So then I do have two social pillars, and they kind of go in different directions as well, but they're both things I've either been involved in or that I care about. The first is sexual and gender-based violence in our community and on campus. And the long or the short of this one is mostly that I want anyone who votes for me knowing that I care about this topic deeply. I'm somebody who survived a sexual assault in my first year. And I don't believe that you have to have, it's not a club that you have to have had an experience to be a valuable voice or that your voice matters. But I also want to be somebody that can be a representative of someone who has their experience, that wants to continue to advocate from it and use it as a position to raise my voice. And so with that, this social issue is one that I personally value. And I would like to know that when you vote for me, I will always be keeping it in mind whenever anything related to it comes up on topics at the USC. And I, when given the chance, I'd like to encourage positive changes. And I wish to be a counselor that acts passionately and with empathy. Hopefully, it'll be a valued position and perspective to improve anything related to the subject. And it's something that resonates with anyone voting. Because it's a campus-wide issue, and I think it deserves a strong voice that's willing to contribute. And from the FIMS perspective, now that the role of counselor is introduced, it allows us to have two voices. I just would like to highlight that that's something that I'll personally emphasize. And lastly, my other social pillar is environmental advocacy. And so it's obviously I have an interest in that from working with TREE, or the organization I mentioned. And on the environment, there's always a lot of different varying improvements that can be made that are big and small. Sometimes they don't seem as substantive, but the reality is Western is a really, really big community, and FIMS is a growing faculty with lots of different voices. And so things like waste management strategy can be impactful, but also just education on environmental perspectives can be impactful because they lead to changes in behaviors. So obviously my volunteering is an example of my commitment to the issue, but it also isn't going to distract from how much I care about it happening at Western as well. And so the role of FIMS counselor would allow me to participate in choices that affect all of these pillars as a voice and an advocate. And if elected, I'd want to just to really point out that you can count on me to always uphold and maintain these interests to the USC and within our faculty as well. Prior to me getting serious about running in this election, I wasn't really familiar with the position of counselor. And I also hadn't heard the word consultations as much as I have now. And I wanted to point that out as the last thing to talk about, because I've realized and learned that consultations are an integral part of this role, and how the entire conversations that I'm talking about with advocacy, representation, and voice can be possible. It's consulting with constituents, people in our faculty, and taking those talking points and bringing them to the USC as someone you can trust to highlight them and raise your concerns and your values. And so the last thing I'd like to mention is that if elected as FIMS counselor, I'll have open office hours and lines of communications so that anyone in our community can have their voices heard and hopefully see tangible action. I wish to bring your voices to the USC as best as I can, and hopefully I've been able to illustrate all of those important values talking to you guys now, and even if you're interested in getting involved yourself.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to kind of give us an overview of everything. I have a few questions. I've got a few questions that people have sent in on the Q&A function. If you guys have any questions as we go, feel free to send them in. I've also gotten a few notes that there's some funky stuff going on with the video and kind of whose video is popping up on people's screens. We're working on it. We're gonna kind of figure it out as we go. But just wanted to give you guys some transparency on that. But while we sort those things out, Ava, I guess I'm going to start with this question for you. Uh, Kind of a question that I had coming into this and a question that was sent in. I kind of want to know a little bit more about what your vision for the role of FIMS counselor is, because this is a brand new position, never been done before in FIMS, very exciting. Um, what priorities are you bringing in, aside kind of from the ones that you've touched on throughout your platform? What priorities are you bringing into your work on the USC level?
I think like so it kind of connects to what I just mentioned about the idea of consultations because as much as I have the kind of pre-existing agendas that I've just mentioned, at the end of the day, the counselor role is a connection and a liaison between our faculty and the USC. And so there's obviously always going to be outstanding efforts and routes and projects that the USC is trying to advance. And so I'll be walking, if I, I'll be walking into that position um, being a new voice that's contributing to all of those different things that are happening within the USC. But also, I think that it comes down to rather than what I personally want to do, it's anybody who interacts with the counselor position and engages in those consultations and raises concerns. It's bringing our faculty's problems to the USC rather than my own. It's what are things that people have highlighted that they personally care about that need to be advocated for and represented because that's part of what's happening with the role of president. Like prior, Katie, you write that this year you're taking on both jobs, the presidential job and the counselor job. And so in future years, it'll be that the president and the counselor will be able to split up the advocacy on the USC and contribute hopefully stronger. It was something that I'm hopeful about.
Awesome. Another one for you. Actually, I'm going to start with this fun one that somebody just typed in that I was very excited to see. The question reads like this. If you could have the USC do anything without worrying about if other counselors would vote for it, what would you do?
I kind of mentioned waste management. I think that right now Western has 90% of our waste diverted. And I think that that lacks accountability for the fact that we have the biggest impact on the London community than any other really body here. And so I think it would be really important to just immediately try and influence some sort of policy that would just acknowledge it and to be a little bit more accountability for our impact here in London.
Awesome. Okay. Another one that I'm kind of bringing in. Of course, as we've talked about, this is FIM's first year with a counselor position. Uh, and with that, I think there's definitely going to be some work that you'll have to take on in terms of letting people know about the role, about what your responsibilities are. So, how do you plan to bring awareness to the role and the capacity that you have as counselor to advocate for students at the USC level?
Well, I think a perspective that I've just gained over time as I've gotten farther away from my first year is that sometimes I felt like our welcome wagon was a little bit limited to just the soft team. And that's like a really, really big burden to shoulder because there's only so many softs, but there's plenty more frosh for how many of them there are. And so I would be really interested in seeing some sort of adaptation of that process that really emphasizes and highlights things that the FIMSSC are doing. And I think that's also part of why sometimes people say, "What is FIMS?" and ask that question that I find so ridiculous. Because there's like a little bit of a disconnect between the two like communities, the greater Western community and then the FIMS one inside, because there's other faculties that are so easily tangible, like engineering, where you can really quickly say, okay, I recognize what that means. And I would love to try and, I guess, even produce a new conversation that just doesn't even address the fact that FIMS could be invalidated by what are you?
Awesome. I actually just got another question in. I kind of feel like I'm a game show host. This is very fun. Looking through your platform, one of the things that kind of stuck out for me was your kind of desire and your goal of creating a more cohesive flow of information across FIMS and within the FIMS community. And somebody actually just messaged in and asked the same kind of thing. So could you tell us a little bit about how you're kind of planning to achieve that goal?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of layers to it because it's tricky like we're in this really weird phase right now where there's a bit of a transition from things like Facebook to Instagram, and there's different threads of how people communicate. And I think the biggest thing is sometimes I feel like I find out about events in hindsight, or the things that we're hearing are sometimes campus wide related, sometimes just centric to FIMS. And when I say consistent flow, I just want it to be a reliable I want the FIMSSC and as a voice of counselor to be a reliable one that is always you can count on things related to our program being represented, things related to the USC being represented, and also a really, really clear, hopeful, transparent conversation about what I'm doing and what I'm up to. Because at the end of the day, that's what I can immediately control. I can control my voice and the way I communicate to the faculty. And so consistent flow of information, I can at least promise would be me consistently making available what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and hopefully allowing other voices to be a part of it as well.
Incredible. Um, Somebody has just messaged in, how do you plan on working with counselors and presidents from other faculties next year on the USC level?
Yeah, well, there's a really fun kind of lucky thing that's built into FIMS that I got a little bit of a taste of earlier this semester, but that's FAM with FIMS Arts and Music. And so immediately, I'm actually really excited to kind of get involved with those other faculties if given the opportunity, because I think that in the same way that FIMS is untouched, there's other faculties that are untouched as well. I also feel like I'm in a bit of a lucky, privileged position with things like social science. I have obviously classes in everything for my double major with social science. And so there's an interesting duality to my network at Western. And I hope that that's something that can help me bring forward to connect with people that I've not met before, but also people that I am familiar with. And also something that was really positive I felt has come out of this election period so far is I've been contacted by different counselors and people that are already involved with the USC that have I've been able to consult with, which has been, I think, incredible because it's an opportunity to hear those voices that I'm hoping to see in the future. And so to that, I hope that with different counselors and presidents, once we're hopefully back, as you mentioned, in person next year, it'll be something that is an easier, tangible thing. But until then, it'll have to be a bit of a digital thing.
Incredible. Uh, I wanted to kind of ask you, as a FIMS student and as somebody who very obviously has a very deep love for FIMS, what is the biggest lesson that being in FIMS has taught you thus far?
Hmm. Biggest lesson, I think, is a little bit about the diversity of a community. Because I think my background, I'm from Vancouver, and I went to a very small school there, and there was a lot of like-minded thinking, and it wasn't necessarily one that took in, because it's funny how schools can teach you to think outside the box, but at the end of the day, you're all coming from the same perspective, and it's a really similar voice. And so I think the variety of lessons that, mandatory classes, all of those things that I've learned is nothing is one straight linear path, nothing is black and white. There's gray areas and there's histories. And I think we also see that in the way that FIMS operates as a faculty as well. It's if sometimes I find if we ask why is something the way it is, there's actually like a very legitimate history and example to explain why it is that way. And so like my favorite class that I took was 2200, and I know that that's not necessarily a popular opinion, but it genuinely was. And I even have uncovered this like love of theory and learning about theory, which I never thought I would be like so nerdy that I like reading things that are outdated. But it's true. I like learning the histories and understanding problems. So then when I speak to them, I can actually be really well rounded.
Awesome. Okay, so I see that we're kind of coming up on 7:55. I think that we're going to go until 8 o'clock with you, Ava, and then we're going to chat with Haley, who is our presidential candidate. So in the last couple questions, somebody messaged in, do you have any FIMS specific related issues that you want to bring to the USC and advocate for on that level?
This might seem like a little bit of a niche thing, but I think it's a really real thing. And it kind of comes down to that theory and everything that I just mentioned, which is we're a very text based program, right? There's like a lot of reading involved and it stems from that. But in terms of accessibility, we actually also have a lot of barriers, I find. For example, like right now, a lot of my classes, everything has been scanned in, but that doesn't mean that all of the resources that we're reading can be used in like a PDF format from text to speech for somebody who needs that. And so I think that one of my frustrations that comes through is just that there's like a multi-level of accessibility in FIMS, and it should be even for everybody.
Awesome. And I guess we'll kind of round things up. Obviously, with the role of USC counselor, you're going in and you're representing FIMS on a kind of different level than we've been able to before with the counselor position. So how do you plan on balancing your own personal politics with the role of counselor and representing a faculty of 900?
Well, I hope that firstly, I've been able to be really transparent about my perspectives. And so if anyone were to be voting for me, they'd be comfortable and aware of the things that matter to me, like I outlined in my platform. But then it's also, this is something that was really valuable that I was able to learn from you, Katie, as well, is just the coming into the role as like I almost want to be like a mouthpiece for the 900. Like I would love to be somebody who is just echoing the things I'm hearing. And when it is my own voice, being honest about that, because they're two separate things and they're not equally weighted. It's 900 to 1.
Awesome. Well, it has been so lovely to chat with you, Ava. Maybe if you want to take 1 second and just tell people kind of how they can find your platform, how they can get into contact you, get into contact with you if they're looking to, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy to be contacted by social media, and those are also both places that host all the access to my information regarding my campaign and other materials I put together for you. And they're both listed by my name, Ava Thompson, on Facebook and Instagram. So they're super easy to find.
Incredible. Okay, well, thanks so much for being here. And we are going to work on transitioning over to getting a Haley onto the screen. Give us a few. Oh, and just like that, it's happened.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Cheers, Ava. We'll talk to you soon. Okay, hello, Haley.
Hello.
This Zoom thing is always a bit of an adventure. But so nice to have you here. Thanks for being here, and I love your background.
Thank
Um,
you.
if you want to maybe take a few seconds to just kind of give us a little bit of an overview about you, to introduce yourself and your platform.
For sure. Okay. I have my notes on my phone, so my apologies if I'm looking down. And I'm sorry if I freeze. I don't have the best Wi-Fi, so I'm so sorry if that happens. Someone just let me know. But hi, everybody. My name's Haley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in my 3rd year of majoring in MPI and loving it. And I'm specializing my degree in marketing and public affairs with a keen interest in sustainability and political communications. So very FIMS in my opinion. As you know, I'm running to be your next FIMSSC president, and after having been involved in council for the last 2.5 years, I've started my journey with the FIMSSC back in my 1st year when being selected as one of the advocacy commissioners, then as international outreach coordinator in 2nd year, specifically working with international students, and then now as LGBTQ liaison for the FIMS wellness team. I'm also currently involved in the USC. I act as the Associate Vice President or AVP of Public Affairs under the communications portfolio with Cam Wong and Callista Ryan, who's one of the USC presidential candidates. Additionally, I'm also on Pride Western as a communications associate and on the Western Marketing Association as one of the mentorship directors. So for my diverse array of experiences and being in different roles and environments, I feel very confident in leading the FIMSSC to enacting the changes we have been wanting to see for the past couple of years and elevating the trajectory of our council. So a little bit about me. If you know me, you know I'm pretty obsessed with our faculty. I love our programs, the opportunities and resources, our building, even though it definitely does not have enough chairs or adequate heating at times. And without a doubt, all the amazing and extremely talented people. When preparing to run, I did over 50 hours worth of consultations with people all across our faculty and with external leaders too in the USC as well as alumni. It was really interesting to listen to everyone's positive experiences with, it was really interesting to listen to everyone's positive experiences about what they liked about FIMS, but also better understand the things that we were frustrated with and we did not like. as film students, we know it's through being critical of the systems and institutions and mediums that we are part of that we can ensure the growth and development of them. So that's exactly why I'm proud of my platform and cannot wait to talk more about it tonight, as it is entirely student-driven, empowered. These are the things that you guys have told me. These are the things we need to all recognize, need more work and greater advocacy on. These are the things we need to push more as a council and execute as a faculty. Furthermore, my platform is comprised of 5 pillars: community, leadership, internal and external relationships, academic wellness and diversity, and improve career accessibility. My overarching theme with my platform is the last pillar, with everything returning to better supporting FIM students and the accessibility with and of their degree in education. Before I conclude, I want to say a huge thank you to my team, Kristen, my campaign manager, Ewan and Jemana, my fantastic graphic designers. They've been absolutely killing it for me. Brett, my website developer, Aaron, my policy advisor, Tiffany and Chelsea, my international representative, as well as my LAMP representative, and of course, our very own Sierra, who's my photographer, who took pictures in the snow for me on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, for your support in coming out tonight. Nothing could have been made possible without your support and love. And with that being said, I'll pass it back to Katie.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to take a sec to remind everybody that if you do have questions, feel free to send them in over the Q&A tab, and I will throw those kind of into the mix as we go through our conversation tonight. I think we're going to start off with a question that I've kind of brought into this conversation / debate-esque thing. So as FIMS president, you're responsible for working both within the FIMS and the USC sphere. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you plan to navigate the administrative bureaucracy that you're going to face when looking to kind of achieve some of your goals in both of these areas.
For sure. So when I was international outreach coordinator, I worked a lot with admin. And I know at times, I think the main reason why sometimes we struggle to align with our goals and accomplish the things we want to accomplish is just there's not enough communication. So for me, the biggest thing that I would want to improve and facilitate better is just consistent levels of communication and setting timelines. I think that's the biggest thing, because oftentimes we all want to do different things and we all have our own schedules. Admin obviously has a very strict schedule that they have to follow. As students, most of us are full-time students, running around doing school, extracurriculars, part-time jobs, things like that. So I think having a cohesive, collaborative timeline that we could make together so we can, bird's eye view, see what is our goal, how are we going to accomplish it, when are we going to accomplish it, what are the steps we need to take in between to accomplish those things. That would be my biggest thing. Also, having been part of the USC this year, I've definitely been much more my eyes have been much more open to how the system actually works. So I think having that structural knowledge and foundational comprehension of how exactly things function and the order in which they function, I think will give me a lot greater of a perspective and understanding to execute change in an efficient and effective manner.
Awesome. Okay, somebody's just sent in this question. So how do you plan to integrate student feedback to influence academic content, as you noted in the first point under your academic pillar?
For sure. So with student feedback, I think this year has been really interesting because we've seen that things like must knows are a great way to get feedback. So I think something that I would really love to instigate is just really robustifying our Instagram more, putting polls up consistently every week, doing weekly council update videos where students can DM and be like, oh, you guys accomplished this. I think you missed this. Please include this, and having little bits of feedback that way. Obviously, feedback forms are great as well. The struggle with feedback forms is I feel like we never get enough feedback. We get a very small pool, and because of that, it's very biased. So I think really promoting that better, utilizing our website. I know Facebook is kind of dying off because the new generation just does not use Facebook at all. But I think if we could bring back our Facebook just a little bit, enough where students can go back to it if they need to, because there are still quite a bit of students that do use Facebook. So I think really channeling on all our social media platforms, because I feel like every social media platform has a certain group of students we reach. On TikTok, we'll reach a certain group of students. On Instagram, we'll reach a different group of students. On Facebook, we'll reach a specific group of students, and really encompassing all of those things and releasing feedback in that way, I think will gather a larger pool of data, which we can better use to integrate like what we want to see and like what we want to see with like our professors teaching. Do we want more BIPOC scholars being taught in our classes? You know, are we getting too much cross-referencing material? Things like that.
Oh my gosh, sorry, I sneezed.
It's all good.
I also wanted to ask you what priorities you're looking to advocate on the USC level. Of course, we talked with Ava a bit about her role as counselor and those kind of priorities. But of course, as president, you're coming in, you have your own set of advocacy goals that you're able to achieve. So I was wondering if you could talk to some of the things you're looking to do on that level.
I think one of the biggest things I want to do is really let people know what FIMS is, because as Ava mentioned, a lot of people don't know what FIMS is, and even counselors sometimes are confused to what exactly our faculty is, what our program teaches. And so I think one of my biggest things is to just engage with our community and the counselors and student council more with what exactly FIMS is, and really representing what we need in our faculty, kind of supports we require and desire to see, what we're being taught and why that's important, the skill sets that we can transfer over to the USC and to other employers and environments as well. Because I think, and kind of to go off that, another thing I really want to advocate for is for more FIM students to get involved in the USC and be able to access the positions in the USC. Because for me, I got really lucky this year to get my position on the USC. Obviously, I worked very hard, but imposter syndrome, so I feel very lucky. But on my communications portfolio, we have two FIM students. One's a brand journalism coordinator, the other is a graphic designer, and they're some of the strongest people on our team. And it always bums me out because I feel like FIM students, we just don't hear about these opportunities. I feel like we get looked down upon because we're so small faculty, because we're not a hard science program. We're not in STEM. I feel like sometimes there's a lot of judgment and preconceived notions about like our strengths and like what we're capable of doing, when in reality I feel like FIM students are one of like some of the most flexible, malleable students, in the sense that our degrees are extremely valuable and so diverse in the way they can be applied. So I think I want the USC to recognize that more and really showcase the students like what opportunities available and help them access those, because there is 100% an accessibility barrier when it comes to getting a job in the USC, getting involved in the USC. And with that being said, it's even harder if you're queer, if you're BIPOC, if you're a USC outsider. For me, like I'm one of the few USC outsiders this year on the USC this year. And I think that's one of my biggest strengths, because I come in with the perspective that other people don't have, because obviously there's a term called the USC bubble, which is that you get confined to this sort of echo chamber and you get tunnel vision, and you don't get to see or really understand how unrepresentative it can be when you're on council. So I think really bring that perspective and those actions forward would be one of my biggest advocacy priorities.
Incredible. Somebody just sent this question in. What are some of your ideas and plans for working with other faculties next year?
For sure. So one of the biggest things I'm excited for is FAM collabs. So for those who don't know, FAM stands for FIMS, Arts and Music. We are three of the smallest faculties on campus, and however, when together, we are extremely, extremely strong. So if elected as president, one of the first things I would like to do is sit down with the other elected presidents in FAM and just have an open conversations about what do we value for the incoming year? What are our top priorities as presidents? What did we include in our platforms that align with one another? And what do we envision for the future of FAM? Because I feel like traditionally we've done a couple of things together, but I feel like there could be a little bit more cohesive effort with like people on our council, not just presidents working together, but everyone, like all the members on council working together. And I think that starts with us just having a conversation and getting to know one another, because I think for my year on council for first year, we did FAM Christmas market, I think, where it was like a market at Weldon, and I had no idea who I was working with. These were like nameless people. And I was like, this is just so much harder, because if I knew who these people were, I'd be more motivated to work. I would want to collaborate more. I would want, I just want to get more involved. There's that social element that brings us together. So I think that's a big thing. I really wanted to do a FAM mural. So I think this would obviously this is like contingent on like COVID and lockdown, but I think it would be really dope if we could have an art student commission a piece somewhere on campus and we could do like paint by the number. And so each faculty could like start with the number. And so like if like FIMS was like green, we'd color all the green stuff and then we go blue and red and like whatever colors were. Then we create a mural at the end. And it could be a great way to like obviously show student art and work together as fam and get to meet one another and just have a good time because who doesn't love painting? But yeah.
I guess kind of along that idea of collaboration, cross-faculty programming, I was wondering if you could let us know a little bit about your plans for what will happen with your presidency, with your strategic direction of council, if we are to continue on in this kind of online format that we have been for the past little while.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, when I was doing my consultations, a lot of the time people ask me the same question. They're like, if things are online still, like, are these things transferable in a digital format? And my entire platform is. And so my plan with, if things continue on the trajectory of being virtual and being digital, I think I want to have more council meetings, just like our council. And then obviously we'll have like open council meetings with like general members. But I think as a council, I just want to understand where everyone is at. Because obviously I have my own perspectives and understandings of what it means to work virtually. Like definitely as like someone who doesn't have always the most consistent internet, who's like low income, who's working part-time, there's a lot of things I'm juggling, and being virtual has its benefits and its cons to me, but that's so subjective to me. So I think as a council, I want to better understand what it's like for everybody else. And I think from there we can see like, okay, these are some things that we've outlined that are present in our council and most likely present within our faculty. How can we address these and how can we transfer these over into making sure it's accessible and engaging to everyone? I think that's my greatest priority, because I feel like a lot of the time students who don't have consistent access to internet or just don't have the technologies to participate are entirely left out in the dark, and we just don't even know about them, right? So I think really being able to formulate a strong way for students to communicate with us in every accessible format, whether that's email, our newsletter, our Instagram, our Facebook, DMing us, like I want all the VPs to be accessible like in some format. So if they can reach out to a VP that they feel comfortable with, I think that will be on my list to do, as well as I think working very closely with the head soft will be very, very integral, because I think obviously the head soft and the soft team are one of the largest leadership groups in our faculty, and they are our biggest source of dissemination of information. That was a very FIM statement. But I think working closely with the heads off and making sure they're aware of what's going on, they can disseminate all the information, and that can trickle down to the first years, because obviously they're going to come in, and obviously engagement is really important in whatever year you are, but especially in first year, because when you're coming into first year, it feels really overwhelming and lonely, and having a council that is there for you and supports you is so, so integral. And I like look back at my first year and I'm so grateful that council had my back, because I made some of my closest friends on council.
Awesome. I guess I'll throw kind of a fun one in there that somebody just sent in. If you could snap your fingers and change something in or about FIMS, what would it be?
Oh, easy. I would add another floor in FNB. Okay, high ceilings, beautiful. We love to see it, but so echoey and so cold and just so inefficient with the use of space. So if I could add another layer of flooring and then chairs and tables, chef's kiss.
Honestly, love to hear it. I know I'm graduating, but that would be a pretty incredible thing for the FIMS building. Kind of looking to your platform specifically, you noted your goal to advocate to admin on the importance of representative academic content, kind of like advised by FIM students at large. Could you expand on this goal and kind of your plan to achieve it?
For sure. So a big thing that I heard a lot, and obviously like I've experienced too, was that a lot of the course content we learn and from the scholars we learn, they're cis white men. And you know, as great as that can be, it's not representative in the least. And like as I feel like FIMS, we all know it's like very predominantly white and female, which is fantastic, but again, not representative at times. So I think I would love to work with students who are really passionate about these issues, about getting more academic representation, making sure that students are learning things from a holistic perspective, not just from a Eurocentric perspective, getting different ethnicities, sexualities, gender representations, all in that, like all piled in together, and really robustifying our academic content. If we could have, I would love to do like a working group, or just like a group of students who come together and talk about these things, talk about what we've been frustrated about, what we've heard in classes. It would kind of be like FIMSS, I was gonna say toolbox, but I forget what it's like, it's slipping my mind, but I forget what it's called. It's like where we do our feedback. Katie, do you remember what it's called? Is it toolbox, or am I tripping?
It's toolbox as of your first year, but red table talk, or table talk, sorry, a table talk as of 2 years.
Right. Sorry, I always think it's toolbox because I remember attending it in my first year, and then the years prior. But yeah, I would love to do like that sort of environment and just talk about what we need to see coming forward, and then work and meet with admin and be like, hey, this is like the data we've compiled from students. This is like our personal experiences. These are our suggestions, and this is our timeline. I want to come with a strong plan to admin so they can like very clearly and explicitly see like what we're requesting, what we're asking for, and why.
Incredible. So I think it's we talk a lot in FIMSS about political engagement, and especially political engagement on the university level and in the student sphere. But of course, as we all know, there's always or oftentimes a lack of engagement in student politics on campus. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you plan to encourage higher political participation throughout FIMSS.
Yeah, so I think working on the USC, this has been something that I've been much more exposed to, because obviously our goal this year, before I took my leave of absence, was to make sure that students were getting involved, students felt heard, students felt some sort of emotion when it came to voting, right? Because it's either you're upset, you're frustrated, you're happy, and it's those emotional motivations that drive you to take action. I think this was very evident with bus passes this year, when people just blew, like, to be frank, like blew the shit up on must knows, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? I need my bus pass. What is the USC doing? And that was so, like, that made me so happy, because I was like, yes, like my friends are on must knows, like being angry and sharing their voices, which is so important. And then look what happened. The USC made an executive change to fix bus passes, and I was so glad that happened, because it really evidently showcased to students that your voice matters, your voice can enact action. So sorry, Katie, could you repeat the question?
No, I think that really covers the bulk of it. I was just asking like how you generally plan to encourage more political participation. If you have anything else to say to that, go ahead. But if not, I can move on to another question.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we can't expect people to care about things that they don't know about. I think that's the biggest thing that I've really seen as the underlying issue, is that even with all the communications we do, people at the end of the day still don't really know what's going on. So they're not going to care, right? If they don't know what's going on with bus passes, how do we expect them to get angry about it and to advocate for it? So I think educational content creation will be very integral to increasing political activity and turnout, whether it comes to voting, coming to debates like this, asking questions.
Okay, I just got this question in on the Q&A line. A large part of your platform revolves around encouraging diversity in FIMSS. How do you plan to balance equitable representation versus the tokenization of minority communities across FIMSS?
Great question. Fantastic. Yeah, I think this is something that I've definitely like done in my experience, because even like as a BIPOC person, you make mistakes and you don't know all the answers, and it's through learning. I think the biggest thing about diversifying versus tokenizing is making sure we're not telling students you need to do this. Just because you're a BIPOC student or a queer student, you need to do this. You need to advocate for these things. It's working with students who are genuinely passionate and care about these things, and making it accessible and creating a platform and space and time where they can come and share those opinions and thoughts safely. I'm not going to be like, okay, like BIPOC students only, you come and you like tell me all your experience as a BIPOC student. Like I've had that experience like been pushed on me, and it's so uncomfortable. It's terrifying. It doesn't make you feel very good. And honestly, it's not really effective or efficient in any format. So I think just being authentic and deliberate in the space and time you create for these individuals to openly come and share if they feel like sharing. I'm not going to put an onus on someone just because a certain part of their identity aligns with something and tell them to come share their opinion. I think it's all about just not forcing people, because I feel like that is the most common thing I see, is that like, oh, tell me you're a BIPOC student, tell me about BIPOC issues, educate me about BIPOC issues. And I'm like, I'm not Google. Google is free and accessible. I have a schedule. I have my own things to do. I'm here to help you and maybe guide you there, but I can't give you all the answers. So I would never want to impede that on somebody else.
I'm always losing my mouse. I'm just looking through the list of questions. Again, I see that we're kind of rounding up to the 8:30 mark. So I'm looking through, and I think I'm going to ask another one from the Q&A line. Somebody said, how will you hone an environment within FIMSSC where people can feel safe to share all of their ideas?
Yeah, I think this comes a lot from making sure that we don't, sorry, I'm just trying to think of the best way to phrase this. I think for me, when in my first year, the reason I felt so comfortable and safe to share my thoughts was because you came to council with the setting and the vibe being that we're here to do something positive together. And I really want to like replicate that sort of environment that I've really experienced on council, like all throughout my last 2.5 years. I always knew coming to council that it was okay, because I think, and this has a lot to do with the president and the VPs and how they organize their leadership. So I think really coming in together, and I think this is harder sometimes on virtual because you can't sense people's energy over a camera. So I think working with my VPs and being like, how do we want to better facilitate this? How do we want to make this accessible? How do we want to make sure that we're not cutting people off, that people have the time and space to talk? And then ensuring that, of course, general members, I feel like, are a big aspect in this, because I think on council, we will kind of find our groove, and we'll be like, we know who likes to talk, we know who's a little bit more shy, and we find our groove. But with general members, like, they're totally new and they don't know this energy. So I think ensuring that general members are included, that we create specific times in council meetings to say, like, what do you guys think? What do you guys want to say? Is there anything you'd like to include? I think that will be really big to making people feel safe. And overall, I think one thing I really want to do is that I want VPs and presidents to be accessible all the time, or not all the time, obviously, because that's not realistic. But I mean that in that they'll know how to reach us. We'll have contact information. Ideally, it would be in like the Creative Commons, but on our social media, on like our IG story highlights, and people can reach out to us if they don't feel comfortable sharing in an open setting. And I'm hoping that, some first year, second, third, or fourth year, even fifth year comes to council, they feel comfortable to share their thoughts in the open space. But if not, they have a VP, or they can talk to the president and be like, hey, something on council like bothered me, or I really like this on council, I want to like participate in this. And we have those open space dialogues and spaces to communicate with these students.
Incredible. I think this is going to be our last question of the night before you kind of give your official sign off. Your platform is definitely very robust and detailed. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you plan on prioritizing your goals that you've kind of outlined throughout your platform. Of course, a year, as I am now figuring out, is really not that long of a time. It definitely flies by, good grief. So if you could just tell us a little bit about how you plan on prioritizing all of the goals that you've set out.
Yeah, so if looking at my platform, my top priority is career accessibility, which is, again, the overarching theme of my platform, because obviously we all come here for school and our education and to get our degrees. And I think this year, since a lot of my friends are in 4th year, I'm seeing them really tackle finding a job in a pandemic, which is extremely difficult, like unnecessarily difficult. And I really want students next year, like my graduating class, to really confidently graduate and be like, I have a job, or I can find a job, and I know how to pitch my degree. That's my biggest thing. As Ava mentioned, it's a meme in our faculty that we don't know how to describe a program. And as funny as that is, and as quirky as it can be, it really bothers me sometimes, because I'm like, why don't we know how to describe our degree? You know, we're paying so much money for it. We should be able to describe it. So I think that's my biggest priority. And with my other goals, it's going to be working very closely with my VPs to make sure that the goals of my platform align with the goals that they have for their year as VP, and accomplishing everything together and doing consistent check-ins to see where we are in our goal setting, in our organization of the timeline, and seeing what we're okay with losing, what we're okay with what we're not okay with losing, and working collaboratively every step of the way to ensure that we're doing what's best for FIMS students, which will obviously change as the year progresses, because who knows what happens next year. Maybe things are in person and we need to totally divert what we originally planned for, or things are super bad and we have to, like, knock on wood, we have to totally change what we had planned for again. So I think I'm a very type A person, so consistent check-ins will be my biggest priority with accomplishing my goals as well.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for taking the time to be here, of course. And if you'd like to kind of just let everybody on the call know how they can reach you, find your platform, and everything.
For sure. So first off, I want to say thank you to the interpreters for being here and taking your time. I really appreciate you guys. One of my goals before I left the USC, my leave of absence for the USC, was to make sure all the faculty, council, and obviously USC stuff was accessible. So I'm really glad that we got our interpreters here, and I'm hoping that sorry, I lost my train of thought, and I'm really thankful that they're here as well. I want to say a big thank you to Katie for facilitating this debate, as well as for Ava for her lovely question and answer period. And obviously for everyone again for attending. If you want to reach me, my Instagram, which is where I release and disseminate all my information and content, is HHAYLEYLL. So Haley Lee, or Haley L, with an extra L and an extra H at the front and back. My content is accessible, my platform, my website, my Spotify and Apple Music playlist if you need a good pump up jam, as well as like all my other content is linked in my link tree in my Instagram bio, so feel free to reach out there. If you also want to email me, my email is hlee854@uwo.ca. And yeah, that's all for me. Thanks, Katie.
Awesome. Okay, we're just coming up on 8:29. We're still waiting on one USC candidate. So maybe we'll give it like 2 minutes, like till 8:30 or 8:31, and we'll check back in. Also, we're gonna have to do another Zoom switch thing. So stand by for that. We'll get that going right now.
Haley, I love your Zoom background.
Oh, so thank you.
Oh, are you wearing your red power blazer?
Yes.
Love to see it. Oh my gosh, we have the same necklace. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I miss you. I want to see you again.
I miss you too. I was like, I work with Callista and I really miss working with Callista.
No, one day when the lockdown's over, we'll be back in the office maybe.
Yeah, when we're back on without our leaves of absences.
Yes. Yes, poor Cam. It's okay. I'm sure she's surviving without us.
Yeah.
We know she will be.
Okay, it's 8:31, and We're looking to track down Parker, but I think we may as well get the ball rolling while we're doing that. Uh, yeah, Sierra, I know you can hear. Oh, yeah, you're right there. Just kind of pin as he comes in, hopefully. Uh, so I just wanted to take a second to say hi to our lovely USC presidential candidates. Right now we have Calista and Zamir. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'll give you kind of a rundown of our structure thus far. I'm here moderating the conversation. In your case, it will be maybe, I guess, more of a debate, but still kind of more a conversation. I've got some questions prepped, but also, as always, if anybody in the audience has questions for our USC candidates, please send them my way and I will sprinkle them throughout our kind of chat. And while I ask you each question, I'll kind of let you guys know what order you should be answering in. I'll kind of like name you before you speak, just to kind of save the hassle on that end. So first off, I just wanted to ask if you guys could give us a little bit of a rundown, an introduction to you for those who may not know you, and tell us a little bit about why you decided to run for USC president. Zamira, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie, and thank you to the FIMSSC for having me. My name is Zamir, and I'm running to be your next USC president. A little bit about myself: I'm a 3-time SOPH. I'm a former researcher at the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, and I'm the current president of the Social Science Students Council. I decided to run because, honestly, so for context, I came to Western for science and I ended up in health sci, and then I ended up in social sci, and I spent time in all the faculties for a little bit. And I really came to Western without a full sense of direction on what I wanted to do and who I was as a person. But it was through all of the programming of the USC and the SSC and FIMSSC as well. I remember I did the climate strike with you guys last year, and that radicalized me a little bit. That I really understood, what I wanted to do with my life and who I am. And so I'm running because I want to give back before I leave the university. I think there's a lot of changes that I'd like to see made, specifically with respect to gender-based violence on this campus, with respect to academics and affordability, with respect to building back student life next year. I'm excited for the Q&A, and if you want to learn more about the campaign, check out @VoteZamir on Instagram.
Awesome. I'll just jump in. So Parker, you have a kind of a reference as to what we're talking about right now. The general question is if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you decided to run for USC Pres. But next up, we're going to go to Calista.
Hi, everyone. I'm Calista. I'm in my 5th year international relations at Western, and this year I work for the USC as the Associate Vice President Communications. I actually work with quite a few people on this call on the comms team, so hello to everyone. But I'm running for USC President this year, and I'm running on a platform under affordability, community, and ethics. Just remember ACE. And one of the reasons why I decided to run is to make this campus more affordable, not just in terms of tuition and textbooks, but experiential grants and opportunities as well, and covering basic needs for students in foods and nutrition programming. But also the heart of my platform really boils down to communications. I really want to see the USC work with the students that are already doing the great work on this campus. The USC is a great organization, and it can work to amplify all the other faculties and programs and clubs that are already doing amazing things on this campus. There are so many issues to address. The USC can't do it alone, and we need to work together to solve those bigger problems. And so I'm running on a community-based leadership style. I want us to work together to solve these problems and increase that flow of communication. And a lot of my platform addresses ways to do that as well. And I also want to make sure the USC is more representative of students on this campus by ensuring that we promote USC coordinators, interns, and associate opportunities to faculties as well. So it's not just social science and science. I know that's a very large typical makeup of the USC. And as you see, the 3 candidates running this year are all social science, Ivy based. So I think that's something we do need to work on as a community. But at the end of the day, I just want to see us come together to solve these larger problems that we have. And we can do that by increasing communication, giving advocacy training to councils, and working on council summits and MOUs to work together. And so that's a brief summary of my platform. I also talk about ethics as well, if that's something you're interested in. But again, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, everything, or check out my website, Vote Callista. And there's an audio version of my platform as well, so you can eat dinner and like listen to my voice talk about my policies for an hour if that's something you're interested in. I hear I have a very zen x chaotic voice and presentation style. So if that's something you like, please check it out. Thanks for listening.
Awesome. Parker, if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Parker, and I'm running to be your next USC president. I'm excited to be here. One of the things that I kind of came into this really wanting to do was engage as many students as humanly possible. I've carried that through in my preparation for this, having consulted over 300 students in this process, and I do like to believe that it really is a platform driven by students, filled with creative, tangible ideas. When I was in first year, fresh out of high school, my orientation leader suggested that I get involved in Science Students Council, and I was lucky enough to get a position on it. And I found a community, and I feel like since then I've been lucky enough to find all sorts of different communities, different clubs, more student council, and it's something that I think really made my Western experience truly great. And upon reflecting, I've realized that in large part that's due to the USC and the things that they provide. And I think that's something that I want to really give to all students, or as many students as I can possibly reach. And that starts with engagement, because truthfully, without people being engaged, without people understanding what the heck it is the USC does, people won't use the supports. They won't get involved in the development opportunities. They won't, fight with the advocacy, and they won't come to the events. And so that's where it starts, and that's where my focus is. But don't get me wrong, I'm also focusing on those other areas of the USC, which is why my platform covers the strategic direction of the USC that was laid out 3 years ago, which covers student life, student engagement, student advocacy, student development, and student support. And those are the pillars of my platform, and I'm excited to bring them to you. Maybe I'll highlight one kind of pillar or one platform idea that I'm really excited about that I think would appeal to people here. A couple of things that I want to do is create an app for the USC, as well as improve their website. Their website right now does not do a good enough job of highlighting the different opportunities, resources, supports available for students. And I think it's a development opportunity for students in FIMS, as well as potentially engineering or comp sci to work on those things. And that's something that I just want to bring and sort of provide to students. And it's a very tangible thing that I can reasonably say that next year I'm going to be able to do. And it's a creative idea. The thing that I'll leave you all with is, year after year, presidential candidates, they come in and they have these big promises and these big advocacy asks. And year after year, I think, we move the dial, but it's not necessarily anything really new. And we can't do that work in a year, but just given the structure of the USC. But I think the thing that I bring is the ability to do both advocacy and move the dial on advocacy, as well as understand the operations of the USC and how to improve them. And that's consistent with my understanding from the Board of Governors and the Senate on advocacy and the relationships I already have there, as well as my time within the USC as an AVP. And I'd ask you all to choose together and choose Tomlinson, because I think that's a candidate that's worth voting for. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a few more questions that I've kind of come prepared with, but I've also got some questions that people are sending in. So I guess right now I'm going to start with one that I've kind of come with. When it comes to on-campus politics, the voices of smaller faculties are sometimes not heard. Do you have plans to uplift the voices of students and faculties like FIMS who may feel disenfranchised with the existing structure of the USC? So Callista, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a concern that came up in a lot of my consultations. And one of the things that I want to do is increase that communication by over the summer hosting a council summit, which will be optional to every faculty. But ideally, the USC can sit down with the incoming executives and the faculty to outline an MOU to see what are our common goals and priorities, and how can the USC support the faculty in FIMS in achieving its goals, but also what are its boundaries. So I think outlining exactly our best method of communication with each other. And I think every president has a different leadership style, and from president to president, we need to manage that and figure out the best way we can do that. And also, I think one of the concerns I've heard is there's a lack of executive interaction with counselors, especially FAM counselors as well. And I'd love to increase that communication and improve advocacy training between the USC and faculty as well. And so the USC has a whole advocacy department and full-time staff dedicated to this with funds. And so it can support all faculties in achieving your advocacy goals by providing that training and additional support. That's definitely something we can do. Another area I want to do is improve job postings and communication about what our roles are within the USC. I touched on that in my opening statement, and I think that improving that representation inside the USC will also improve how the USC works with smaller faculties as well.
Awesome. Parker, we'll hop to you.
Sure. So I just want to start by recognizing, I think the recent motion passed at the USC to give smaller faculties more representation on the USC is a huge one, and I think it's a great start. More student voices are heard at the USC from smaller faculties. The way that I hope to kind of improve that and move forward from there is providing more development opportunities within the USC for students and faculties that maybe wouldn't have had them previously. So that includes FIM students being one of the smaller faculties. And like I said, one way to do that is outlined in my platform by improving the website and possibly creating a USC app. That's something that FIM students, I think, can definitely be a part of and be paid to do so within the different roles in the USC, and potentially new roles that are created to amplify that comms portfolio. And another way that I personally hope to do that is by keeping open lines of communication, committing to, meeting with faculty council presidents monthly, as well as trying to attend the different council meetings so that I can be present, I can understand the different concerns. And like I said, engagement is key, getting people engaged with the USC, because that's when people want to share their opinions, is when people feel like the USC is that relatable student body they can go to for advocacy, support, etc. And as long as people don't feel like that and don't feel engaged with the USC, then that's, it's not going to be the case, which is why it's the focus of my platform.
Awesome. Zamir, we'll end off this question with you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I just want to say, love the jersey in the background. So that is definitely a huge issue. The fact that FIMS and other small faculties like arts and music are not getting the representation that they deserve. Parker touched upon it a little bit, but this year at council, I was a champion of that motion to make sure each and every single faculty gets at least 2 votes, spoke in favor of the motion, proudly encouraged others to vote the same. And that was a huge step forward, but I don't think it's enough. I think there's definitely more we have to be doing. I've heard a lot of concerns that the USC president doesn't make themselves available enough to our faculty presidents, and a roundtable with everyone at the table is not sufficient to address the individual concerns of individual faculties. So definitely amendments on that end, making our office hours more accessible. I don't understand why our office hours are only on Concrete Beach. I don't understand why we don't take them to the faculties themselves, like outside the FIMS and nursing building, outside our Eng buildings, outside Talbot College and so forth. But I think ultimately what it boils down to is communication, to consultation, to equity. One of the main reasons I decided to run is because I don't see a lot of equitable governance at the USC. I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm the only racialized candidate running for this position, and I think it gives me a lot of unique perspectives when it comes to advocacy work and so forth. But with that said, my perspective is just one of many, and I obviously have kind of been raised in social science, science and health to a lesser extent. So I don't really understand firsthand what's going on in these other faculties. So when I was building my campaign team and my policy team, I was certain to make sure that we have representatives from each and every faculty, each and every affiliate, each and every identity group we could think of on the team. So I'm confident in that sense that the vision that I'm producing, that's available at Vote Samir on Instagram, in our platform, is representative of each and every faculty. But I want you to know that I'm going to continue to be communicative, be continuing to be transparent, and just listening to FIM students.
Awesome. Wonderful to hear from all of you. The next question I have lined up, could you let myself and everybody here on this call listening know one element of your platform that you believe will have a tangible impact on the lives of FIM students specifically? Parker, we're going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I think, and I've already touched on it a little bit, but improving the development opportunities within the USC, I think that's an area of huge improvement, and it's not just in relation to the like website and that idea, because I recognize that the reality of that is that position will go to like 3 students, and it's not an overarching solution. But what I do hope to do in addition to that is provide other areas of development for students across different faculties. So one idea that I kind of came up with was a professional development coordinator, to improve the career fairs, make it a more diverse span of jobs, as well as provide networking events, different different sort of applicable skills, whether that be like presentation skills, interviewing skills, to help students, fit students to develop themselves for like a professional career following university.
Awesome. Zamir, we'll hop over to you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. My platform is all about student entrepreneurship and so forth, whether it is my idea to create a professional development coordinator position, or whether it is a sustainable projects fund that'll provide students with the seed funding they need to actually implement their own ideas and get work integrated learning opportunities in the community. I think I've set out a lot of ideas on the ways in which we can make sure we're keeping FIM students competitive in the labor force and the job market and so forth. But then beyond that, when I've been speaking to FIM students, I've been hearing a lot about concerns about academic sanctions and so forth. A lot of professors aren't abiding by Senate policies. It's really hard to pursue appeals. It's really hard to hold instructors accountable, especially online, for uploading lectures late or assigning too much and so forth. And so I definitely have a lot of Senate advocacy priorities that will ensure that the quality of our education is not being hindered, especially if we are in an online context again next year, which is what it's looking like. So I would say, on top of my work integrated learning platform points, I think all of my advocacy priorities with respect to academics are going to mean that we have a really equitable, fair, and meaningful academic experience.
Awesome. And we'll finish off this question with you, Calista.
Thank you. I think my community-based leadership style is what will bring the most change, tangible change for FIM students in general. I think increasing that communication, what can we do to support each other and work with FIM students? And again, I touched on it earlier, but again, promoting USC hiring positions, because that is professional development as well, and improving our communications between the faculty. And I have a lot of student life initiatives as well, such as reinventing and revitalizing the concrete beach with public art initiatives. And I want to include faculties in that programming as well. How can we revitalize our student spaces to be more friendly and approachable, and still be able to work with outdoors on campus next year, and managing COVID as well? Because student life, it's something we've had to really navigate this year with COVID, and I want to make student life better next year as well for all students. And I think we can work together on those initiatives. And so I think, again, that community-based leadership style, opening up that communication, getting more students involved in the leadership of the USC, but also making sure that the USC sometimes takes a step back and works with the faculties to do what they do best already. And so that's really what I want to see, and bring that change to campus that way, and promote the work that you're doing. MPI and MIT students are killing the game. I live with an MIT student, and so she tells me all about the projects you're working on, podcast class. How can we showcase and highlight the work you're doing? That's something I'd love to work on with you all, and see all your great work being published and shared with the student community.
Awesome. I've got a policy specific question that somebody has just sent in that I thought was definitely worth including. So the question reads as follows. LGBTQ plus students are severely underrepresented in sexual and gender-based violence policies. How do you plan to mitigate this and make our existing policy less heteronormative? I guess, God, I had a order done. I think that this means that Zamir, you start.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. Whoever asked it, I think that's one that hits close to home for me as a queer student. I was on the USC as a counselor when they were actually approving Western's new gender-based violence policy, and we were asked to provide feedback. And one of the most disappointing things for me was that the policy seemed to focus only on heteronormative conceptions of sex and assault. Specifically, it didn't really pay consideration for oral forms of assault and sex. It only looked at penetrational forms and so forth. The ways in which diverse community groups practice consent and sex and assault are all fundamentally different. And I remember I was providing one-on-one feedback on that end, and I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. In my platform, I outline a whole bunch of changes that I do want to be seeing to that gender-based violence policy, including recognition for the various ways in which assault manifests. But other things I think are important and worth noting is the fact that currently the policy does not have face-to-face protections for survivors. It does not have an independent investigator on the Gender-Based Violence Review Committee. It doesn't guarantee that survivors will know the outcome of their cases. We're expecting students to trust a broken system. In 2017, the government of Ontario did a review of gender-based violence on campus. It's called the Student Voices in Sexual Violence Survey. And it found that in that one academic year alone, 32% of students experience sexual assault and 71% experience sexual harassment. And that is the highest rate across any Ontario university. Gender-based violence is a particularly salient issue at our campus that we definitely need to be addressing. And I think if we are going to address it correctly, we need someone who has the lived and learned experiences to address sex in all of its forms and assault in all of its forms, and not just through the eyes and through the lens of a cis, white, straight, heteronormative individual.
Awesome. Callista, we'll hop to you.
Yeah, this is one of the platform points that I developed with a lot of consultation. And one of the things that I noticed in my consultations with this is that the current policy doesn't even have definitions. So we're missing so many basic components to our actual policy, which doesn't include definitions. And it baffles my mind that, you know, we want to do so much more and do so much better, but Western doesn't even define the difference between sexual assault and harassment. We need to go back to those basics and hammer out what do these things mean on campus and off campus, because some of the supports we provide are only available on campus. And for example, another point on my platform is on campus as well for students and residents. Resident staff actually don't disclose the type of training they're given if they've received training. So we as student leaders it's harder for us to hold residents and housing accountable to the training they receive on dealing with disclosures and sexual and gender-based violence. And I really want to tackle that, as well as getting an additional case manager as well. We only have one case manager for 36,000 students. That's honestly unacceptable. And so definitions as well. But in terms of supporting LGBTQ students in the queer community on campus, it needs to be intersectional. And one of the things I want to do is have a sexual and gender-based violence resource center that also provides peer support training as well with students that are peers who are also trained. I think one of the consultations that I've given is that sometimes Western staff doesn't hit the right note with relating to students and their situations. And so having peer support with students who understand some of those lived experiences is really important. The USC and the university can and should be able to provide that peer training under Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Resource Center, but also providing a safer space on campus that includes products such as binders, and also resources off campus for the queer community as well. And again, bridging the queer community in London to on campus as well. And so there are lots of ways we can do that. But yeah, if you want to check out my platform, there's a lot of points there as well. And I'd love to chat with you more about this too.
Awesome. And we'll finish off with Park. Oh my God.
Thank you. There's, as Zamir and Calista have outlined, there's a multitude of different ways where the policy that's currently in place needs revision and needs restructuring. And I think that's something that's vital. It's something that I'm going to work see current policy as it stands and the structures that are in place. But I think the thing that I bring to the table that's unique is an understanding of how advocacy works on a university level, given my positions within Senate and the Board of Governors. I have those relationships with Jen Massey, who currently rewrote the sexual and gender-based violence policy, as well as other administrators. So that's something that I'm going to be able to more strategically advocate for, be able to hit the ground running with. And it's something that I'm excited to do.
Incredible. Okay, so I see we're coming up on 9 o'clock. I have 2 questions to ask you to finish off. So I guess we'll start with this one that was just sent in by somebody on the stream. And it reads as this. Do you have any plans on decolonizing and indigenizing campus? Calista, we will start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that came up in my consultations was changing some of the labels on campus to include local Indigenous languages. It's something that I'm still looking into further consultation with before I officially put on my platform, because I want to make sure that's feasible. This is something we do in my hometown. I live in the Squamish territories in Squamish, and so that's something we do in my community, and it's actually a really great it builds a lot of great relationships and trust. And so that's something I'd love to see on campus. It's just something I need to do more investigation with the feasibility as well, but also recognizing that the community of Western Ontario is also on several different Indigenous territories. So also recognizing that instead of picking one language to use. So that's something I'm still researching to making sure that it's feasible with. Another thing on my campus, on my platform, touches on foods and nutrition, and working with the Indigenous Support Center with healing gardens and medicine gardens. That's something that is happening on campus, and it's a fantastic program. And so I'd love to see foods and nutrition in an urban garden on campus as well, and possibly work in collaboration with Indigenous students and the Indigenous community on campus to also share traditional cultural medicines and plant life as well, and promote that work that's already being done. There are lots of things we can do together, but that's just a few of the ideas that I had and that are on my platform.
Awesome. Parker, you can go next.
I think one of the biggest points on my platform that I'm pretty proud of, and I think it can work to decolonize, the student body at Western, as well as the different procedures that are in place, is tiered training among, student leaders. And what that looks like is having essentially different levels of training that different student leaders are that have to receive throughout the school. So, if you're a club president, you receive more advanced training than if you're a club director, et cetera. And I think that's one way to just improve education across the board on a lot of different topics, as well as, the how to decolonize our school, our classrooms, et cetera, and just getting people to be more educated on those topics. I know that's just the start of the work, but I think that that's an important place to start, and one that I want to champion within the USC, and it's something that's incredibly important. Thank you.
Awesome. And Zamira, you can finish this one up.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's a really important one, and I want everyone to know that equity is one of the biggest priorities I have as a candidate. When I was consulting with the Indigenous Students Association and other Indigenous students, something I heard time and time again is that the USC's Indigenous Relations Committee actually doesn't provide the supports it should. And it actually does not do a good job of engaging with Indigenous Students Association members. And so one thing that we spoke about in our consultations was creating a representative position on the IRC for the ISA. That's the kind of first big thing I want to be doing. I also think we need to improve our signage on campus to acknowledge the lands that we're on. I understand it's a symbolic move, but I think it helps ground us and help us realize that this land is not inherently ours, and that we, for the most part, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, you know, I'm a settler and so forth. But then I also talk about creating brave and safe spaces. A lot of Indigenous clubs on our campus have, and other ethnocultural groups have raised that they've experienced Zoom bombing this year, and that the club's training was not proactive enough to reduce instances of racism that occur online. In Clubs Week alone, 2 clubs were Zoom bombed by racist individuals from America. So first and foremost, providing proactive training to club leaders on how to keep their Zoom calls safe, how to debrief instances of racism, how to discuss issues of race, and how to call in people, I think is so important. And that's my ideas in terms of protecting safe spaces. With that said, I also want to work with the incoming Vice President Student Support and Programming to host an anti-racism conference to promote brave spaces, to have conversations about race and racism and so forth. When I worked for the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, I conducted a podcast called Perspectives on Campus, and I was able to speak with diverse students from across the province about their experiences, and that opened my eyes in so many respects. And this is an idea that I received a lot of positive feedback in my consultation, so I definitely want to institute that conference as well. We launched a similar event at the SSC just a couple weeks ago, and it was received quite well. And so that's kind of my approach to indigenizing our university and ensuring that we are a more equitable campus for racialized communities.
Incredible. Thank you all for your answers. We have now officially passed 9, so I'm going to wrap it up. If you know me, you know I love to end it off with a fun question. And there's one that's kind of been sent in multiple times throughout the night. So you have obviously all undertaken consultations with students in FIMS. You've had contact with student leaders, students across campus, specifically in FIMS. I would like to hear each of your descriptions of what FIMS is. So I'm trying to figure out, Zamir, you are the last person to talk. So that means Callista, we're starting with you. We're kind of throwing you under the bus because even FIMS students don't know how to describe the program, but take your best shot.
Well, good. I don't know if she's still a prof here, Professor Norma Coates, but I had is she? Yes, Norma Coates.
She's around. She's around.
She's around. I had a first year MIT class, tanked my GPA, so I think it scared me from doing MPI, which is something I was really interested in doing. But I had a class with Norma Coates, and it was Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were getting elected that year. And she came to class every week in a pantsuit, and it was the biggest vibe I've ever. I loved Norma. She was, again, not great for my GPA, but great vibes all around. And she ended the class with showing us an hour of cat videos. And you know what? I loved it. I loved every second of it. And so that left a very lasting impression on me. So even when I look at my GPA, I'm sad, but then I think about the class and I'm happy. But when I ever think of MIT and FIMS and MPI, I think of Norma. You know, she's an icon. So I'm not sure what she's doing at Western now. It's been a few years since I've had her, but I would probably describe FIMS through Norma Coates, but that might not be super accurate. I have a lot of friends in the program, but I'll just go with Norma.
No, that's incredible. I love it. That question is definitely up to interpretation. Like 40 people just messaged me and we're like, oh my God, no, you didn't ask this. So the FIMS community is also like happy to hear whatever you have to say. Parker, you're up next.
Okay, FIMS, Faculty of Information and Media Studies. It is the future. It's exciting. It's a growing industry. And it's one that I've been excited to interact with over the last 3 months. And that's all I'll say.
Incredible. I love to hear it. And to kind of round off the night, Zamir, if you want to throw your hat in the ring.
Thank you. I was actually doing an Instagram live a couple days ago, and someone asked me if I knew what FIMS stood for, and I'm so sorry that that's what the standard for our USC presidential candidates is, and I hope to do you guys justice. But for me, FIMS is all about challenging the status quo. It's all about critical thinking and thinking about the ways in which media and communications informs the way we engage with the world. I think it's also about social justice and moving forward and being equitable. I think it's the degree I would have hopped into had I not decided to take a break at social science and stick around there. And I also think it's about denim on denim because your soft team really rocks that look.
Incredible. Somebody's going to need to write this down because these were three very good definitions of FIMS. I just wanted to take a second to say a big thank you to the three of you. If you, well, I guess I'll just say on behalf of the candidates, everyone has their platforms on Facebook. If I'm correct, can you give me a thumbs up? You can find them, their Instagrams. And if you ever have questions about getting in contact with any of these individuals, feel free to shoot me a message, anybody on exec a message, and we would be more than happy to connect you. Just wanted to say a big thank you to the three of you again for coming out tonight. Definitely appreciate it. And it's always incredible to hear all of your plans, and best of luck with the rest of your campaign season. And I guess we'll see you on results night.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for
Of
hosting.
Of course. I wanted to throw out another big thank you to both of our interpreters, Diana and Matt. So wonderful to have you. Thank you to everybody who's been on the call tonight and sent in questions. I'm so pleased with the number of people that have kind of chatted in. And again, if anybody has any questions about the elections process, feel free to get in contact with me. But until our next meeting, which will be next Monday at 7:30 p.m., we'll see you soon. And thanks again, everyone.
Have a good night. Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night. Goodbye.
Everyone.